I'm pretty sure that it is extremely obvious just by what I'm wearing that I am freezing cold, so I do apologise for my clothing choices today. This video is all about how to photograph people and their pets together, and I'm going to refer in this video to quite a lot of other videos that are on the YouTube channel, so get ready to go ahead and open links in new tabs that are coming up, or just head down to the description below because I'll link all of the videos that kind of work together on this topic down below. Without further ado, let's get stuck in. This type of family portrait is pretty similar to photographing family portraits, as it were, with just humans together, because a lot of the principles are the same. However, you cannot tell a dog to look in a certain direction or angle their body in a certain direction or do a particular action in most cases. So I want to fill this video with actionable tips that can improve your people and pets photographs, hopefully without that much effort. So first things first, you need to make sure that you can take a good portrait. So there is a video on the YouTube channel which is all about how to take a good portrait. That is definitely still relevant for this situation, so I'll go ahead and link that above. It's quite an old video, but it will walk you through the process in terms of the settings and stuff that we use here. So that video is worth a look. If you know how to take a portrait, then awesome. You're kind of like most of the way there really in terms of getting to the end of this project that you've set yourself. But the next thing that you're going to need to do is understand depth of field and how to photograph multiple subjects and keep them all in focus in one image. Now there is a video on that, I'll put that above so that you guys can go ahead and access that quite easily. That video will talk you through the different theory parts and settings involved in taking photographs of multiple subjects, and there is also some basic maths to work out what aperture to set your camera at. So that's in that video. In terms of and away from taking the actual photograph, there are a few things that make people and pets photographs work and that make them not work. In terms of what you want to be looking for and what we're going to cover in this video is the actual posing side of things, and it doesn't have to be posed. You can still take really nice pets and people pictures that aren't posed, so candid images, but they are made better by some tiny little bits that you can tell your clients. So the first thing that I want to cover off here, if you're photographing people and their pets together, whether that's regularly or as a one-off, is to guide your clients, the human part of this image, to be on the same line as the subject's eye. So that is probably the single biggest thing. Is something I tell all of my clients if we're in a situation where we're photographing them and their pets together, is I very quickly and very briefly explain focal points and focal planes. So what I say is I'm going to be focusing on the dog's eyes or your eyes, and there's going to be a really small strip of in focus area in that image. So what I need from you, subject in this situation, is to try and line yourself up so your head is on or around that same focal plane, that line, that gap of focus that the subject's eyes are on. So, and then I do a couple of examples. So for example, if the dog's head was wherever it might be, then just lean slightly forwards or, push yourself slightly backwards. And what that'll do is that'll help me basically to catch this image in one shot instead of having to reset up and go again.
There's a really small sliver of focus. And so what we need to try and do is wherever the dogs put their head, try if you can to put your eyes on the same line as their eyes in terms of line versus.
And what I find with just that small little bit of conversation is that you end up kind of eliminating any and all issues that you're going to have with focus. It doesn't work all the time, and sometimes the client's going to forget or get distracted, or the dog's going to move abruptly, or whatever the situation might be. But 9 times out of 10 they really do take that advice on board, because they're in it to get a good picture just as much as you are, so they're going to do what they can to help you. And so that little bit of advice often does help. So that is tip number 1. Tip number 2 is all about the the actual posing and stuff happening. Now, this is where you as a photographer assists with directing stuff. So tip number 2 is to ask the owner, the subject, the human in this situation to angle their body slightly towards you. And what I mean by that is if they're interacting with their dog or horse or whatever it might be, don't close off your body to me as the camera.
If I'm over there with your body, try and have it a little bit angled towards the camera.
So this is something that comes from kind of like acting, stage school. It comes from drama class back at school. It's to try and keep your body slightly open to the camera. So for example, right now, I'm kind of straight at the camera here. If I'm closed to the camera, I would be kind of facing like this. And so there's kind of like, it's closed off. So you want to be open. It doesn't mean that you have to be this open, just kind of a little bit open so that you can see the kind of, you know, facial expression and stuff. And on that point, just as an extra top tip, if you're photographing females with long hair, try and have them put their hair over the ear closest to the camera, or at least pull that little bit of hair backwards somewhere so that the hair is not over the face and hides the facial expression. That makes a really big difference to the success of the end image.
Can you put your hair behind your ear at this side? Super.
So that is tip number 2, keep the subject open to the camera where possible. An extra sub tip is to have the subject interact with the animal that's in the image with their far arm. So the far arm does the interacting, unless you're making a specific point about what's happening in the image in that moment of interaction, in which case the hand closest to the camera is actually going to help you out even more. So I'll pop in some examples of all of this kind of stuff in action, but I hope that it's helpful. So tip number 3 is all to do with the points of connection. So the October challenge for the monthly challenge was about connection, and I'll put the video to that review linked above. Now that is important for this moment because you'll notice that the winning images had this happening in every single one. So what all of these images have in common is that they've got at least 2 points of connection in the shot. So these 2 points of connection really do make or break pets and people images, and the main thing that I can advise for this is that the connection can be literal, so it can be physical contact, physical connection, or it can be kind of implied connection in terms of eye contact. But either way, there should be at least 2 points of connection between the people and the pet in the image. I'll show you an example of an image that is kind of like a posed portrait in terms of just, you know, a person sat with their animal, and in this instance you want to be looking for 2 points of connection that don't include me as the photographer. So the pet ideally should be either looking straight at the subject, the human, or straight at the camera, either or, but the human ideally should have 2 points of connection with that subject. And you'll find that if there is only 1 point of connection with the subject, the image loses its impact. It loses the feeling of togetherness that will come from the scene that you're setting up. If the subjects are looking at each other, then that is one part of connection, because that point of connection that you've got from eye contact is more implied, but it still counts as a point of connection. So then you need another point of connection, and that secondary point of connection will bring the image together. Okay, so the main thing to take away from this step is to just try and get 2 points of connection and be creative with how you're going to achieve that, depending on if their subjects are looking at you as the photographer or if they're looking at each other. The final point in my people and pets advice, but also just pets and pets, multiples of anything, is to try as best as you possibly can to make sure that all of the subjects overlap with each other. So what I mean by that is try not to have a gap between the subjects. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run an edit of an image where we've got 2 dogs sat together, and I'm going to basically remove the gap that was between them. Quite a simple, straightforward edit to do. But what that does is it gives that feeling of togetherness because you have that point of connection. So try to remove visible gaps that separate pets and people and pets if you're doing multiples together, or just family families, if you're just a portrait photographer, try and eliminate those gaps between the subjects. Or if you've got one that has a gap but another set in the other side of the image doesn't, make sure you close that gap, because it's going to be really obvious. The only time that I would recommend leaving a gap is if you're doing something like a silhouette shot, or if you are, deliberately highlighting the shape of the gap, then definitely go ahead and leave a gap. But other than that, try and remove gaps wherever possible, because it'll just bring the image together a little bit more. So, I mean, it's pretty much all of those elements put together, and you'll end up with an amazing people and pets shot, to be honest. Don't forget that you can enter people and pets images into the TOG Awards, where the grand prize is $500 to the winner. So that is something that you could potentially consider doing. If not, just put it onto Instagram and tag us in it, and I'd love to see it. So go and have fun photographing people and pets. And if anybody would like to photograph me and my pets, then I'm actively looking for a photographer to shoot us next year. That is me and my horse, and also me and my dogs. So yeah, that would be like a fun adventure, wouldn't it? Okay, right, well, that's it. Hope you're all safe and well, and I'll see you all again really, really soon.